Secretary of State Rex Tillerson is on the ground in Russia to try to convince the country to rethink its support for Syria's leader, Bashar Assad. Warning ahead of the visit, the dictator's days are numbered.
I think it's clear to all of us that the reign of the Assad family is coming to an end. But the question of how that ends and the transition itself could be very important, in our view, to the durability, the stability inside of a unified Syria, and its stability and durability of the outcome going forward.
In an interview with Fox Business's Maria Bartiromo, President Trump explained that their Syria strategy hasn't wavered.
We're not going into Syria, but when I see people using horrible, horrible chemical weapons, which they agreed not to use under the Obama administration, but they violated it.
They said they got rid of them.
Hey, look, what I did should have been done by the Obama administration a long time before I did it. And you would have had a much better, I think Syria would be a lot better off right now than it has been.
Okay, so strong statements by both the President of the United States, Eric, and the Secretary of State, Tillerson.
I get good news and bad news.
Okay.
First, the good news.
Probably the good news.
Good news is, number one, the deconfliction line continues to operate according to General Mattis. I believe he said it was still ongoing. He didn't want to get specifics, which means if there's any sort of flights going across Syria by either the U.S. or the Russians, we will call each other and give each other a heads up. The other good news is General Mattis today was amazingly calm and measured. He was fantastic. That's the guy you want talking about your Syria strategy. The other piece of good news is Rex Tillerson in Moscow. That's great. That's also good. So now the bad news. Oh, one more. Other good news. Syrian Air Force is 20% depleted, destroyed from the airstrikes. Great. The bad news now, there's a Russian ship sitting next to our ships, next to the ships that launched the 59 Tomahawks. And the other one is, when you take a step back and you say, we hit Assad, ask the next question. Who is Assad fighting in Syria in this civil war, right? He's fighting rebels. Who are ISIS more aligned with, the rebels or Assad? And you have to say, if they're not with the rebels, they're more aligned with the rebel interests, right? So this has to be really clearly defined, and I think General Mattis did. I think he cleared up a lot of things. He said, we're not going to call red lines anymore, but we know if you're going to use chemical weapons on women and children and families and innocent civilians, something will be done.
Okay, so Dana, so no more discussion of red lines, but that obviously is kind of clearly delineated in terms of use of chemical weapons will not be tolerated.
Right, and I guess if that's the threshold that they're going to establish, that would be one thing, except that I do think it's worth asking the question that I agree chemical weapons, like those should be banned. They should not be used. But if the means of killing is coming from some other way, like the barrel bombs with using, nails and infused in or put into bombs that they send into hospitals, and the women and children are being killed by those too, I think that it's worth the question. I think a lot of the press questions are ahead of where the policy is right now, and so one of the most important things to do is to try to slow down and urge patience with the press so that the policy can catch up. And I think that the administration that's underway. They've sped up that process just out of necessity.
Okay, because you see some of the problems, Dana, from a communications perspective in terms of if the policy isn't ready yet and you have individuals going out trying to articulate it but aren't quite certain exactly what it is.
Well, the press will always look for any sort of daylight. And as policies are being developed, of course, there's going to be some daylight. But it looked like to me that they were a little bit more all on the same page today.
Especially with Matt. You agree Mattis did a good job in terms of coming forward?
He's amazing.
He's amazing. A measured mad dog.
I'd follow him.
I love it. Absolutely. Okay, so Greg, what do you make of these new developments?
More of the same to me. I look at it, it is to me like pro wrestling. You have symbolic gestures and you have choreography, and it's, in a way, in the background, guaranteeing safety for all countries while giving off a sense of authority and risk. It's basically a lot of face-saving posturing that is necessary for world powers to exist. So you don't see, what you see are these actions, but what you don't see is the implicit understanding that nothing going on here is actually personal. The good thing about Tillerson and Rex and Mattis and all these guys, they express an authority that doesn't just benefit us, but it also helps our adversaries. In a good way. Yeah. Our adversaries, they need to know their limitations. They were actually relieved when somebody tells them things that they can't do.
Right, consequences.
Because it actually helps them, because they don't want to die either. And it's actually a relief to them to deal with somebody, a rival like the United States, that says, we're not going to let you do this, we're not going to let you do this. And it's like they go back and they talk amongst themselves and they figure out, well, at least we have something that we can work with. And before, we didn't really know what the red line was. Now we kind of do. It's a level of maturity. These are adults. It's like it's like the adults came home from vacation, and now the kids are back at school, and now they're the ones dealing with all the neighbors' complaints.
Right. Because the wayward teenagers were having parties and acting wild.
The neighbors, adult neighbors came over, and they're kind of starting up too. They put the Russian ship next to ours. I mean, man, it's just, this is getting a little, what do they call it? A little chippy.
Chippy?
Yeah. A little chippy.
Bob, so what do you think of what's been going on today in terms of, you know, these latest developments and some of the comments that Matt has made?
Well, the first thing I'd say is that the ban on chemical weapons goes back to the end of the First World War. So that's not, it wasn't just under the Obama administration. Secondly, the president said, we're not going into Syria. I'm glad he said that. I think it's the right thing to do. But here's the question, and Eric raised this, and it's a very important one. This is a short-term military operation. Yes, it had some positive aspects. But in the long run, I think Assad is going to be thrown out of power. But the question is, who takes his place?
Him?
If the United States is not willing to go in, which we should not go in, the Russians certainly will, I'll tell you that. And ISIS and the groups that are against Assad, the Syrians, getting together is a real possibility. Then you've got not only ISIS in Syria, but you've got ISIS in the capital of Syria. So that worries me a lot. And the other thing I have to say, because I can't let this go, because our producer didn't put it in the lineup, but Sean Spicer, the president's secretary today, said that unlike Hitler, Hitler didn't gas his own people, and referring to Assad. Sean, go back and take a hard look at the Second World War where gas was used.
Obviously, he made a mistake, Bob. Thank God none of us here make mistakes like that.
That's a pretty big mistake.
Oh, I admit it's a big mistake, but let's remember how many big mistakes are made at this table.
You know what? You bring up an interesting question, though. Tillerson today said Russia shouldn't back Assad because when Assad is removed by whomever, not supposed to be us, remember, but when he is removed, Russia will go with him and have no presence in the Middle East. That was Rex Tillerson's comment. I mean, so you do bring up a great point. If Assad's gone, if Russia's not going to take over the day-to-day duties of Syria,
who steps in? The leadership back. Remember, we've seen this happen before. You know, with the Muslim Brotherhood stepping into power, et cetera.
And all of these problems, though, are the ones that President Obama cited in 2013 for his reason of not actually going ahead and doing it. Well, he said that Congress wouldn't back him up, which I think that he didn't need Congress's backing anyway, as President Trump showed the other night that his legal justification was under Article 2. But I also think the other interesting piece is that Rex Tillerson is on a mission to explain to the Russians that we will not tolerate the fake news propaganda that they are putting forward, which was that the rebels themselves were the ones that dropped the chemical weapons on the Syrian people. And so it is actually kind of interesting to have to go to Russia with that message when we've been having that conversation here ourselves. To talk about like legitimate news being fake news, like, no, this is actual fake news and it is a problem. And what I understand is that it's not just coming from the propaganda arm, but from high levels in the military on that hotline that we're talking about, that they're repeating it as well. So that's another thing Secretary Tillerson has to do.
Think about how crazy this is right now. Even the AP reporting yesterday that the Russians, according to a high-level source, knew that the chemical attack was going to happen prior to the actual chemical attack, and now that has been clearly kind of debunked all day.
By Mattis today.
But think about the AP. I mean, what's going on here? There's this massive amount of miscommunication going on.
Yeah, they've got to tie this down.
The good news is Tillerson, I mean, this is not a blind date.
No.
All right, Tillerson knows Russia better than Obama knew Bill Ayers. And the fact is, the previous administration looked at the world through the lens of the faculty lounge. These guys, whether it's Mattis or Tillerson, look at the world through real-world experience. They're dealing with facts, not the faculty, and that's important. And I think that's why you should have a certain level of confidence that there's things going on, again, that we do not see. We see the obvious things, but we don't see what's happening behind. Again, it's like professional wrestling. There's a choreography to all of this.
As long as the opposite side acts as expected, then you have Russians who may not act as you would expect,
exactly.
or the North Koreans.
Here, I want to bring Bob in. You know, Tillerson is going to be forced to meet with lower-ranking Russians, kind of as a sign of Putin's displeasure, because it's very.
I think that Russia changed its mind.
They changed their mind. He's going to meet with one individual that Kerry worked with. That's going to be good, but Putin will not commit to any schedule. We don't know whether or not he's going to meet with him, but they have a prior, existing relationship. So let's see how it develops. But at least this is somebody, Bob, that has experience dealing with Russia and really understands them well.
Yeah, and I think, though, that if he understands, well, as Greg says, he's got facts, and you can, go back to Obama all you want. The facts are that there are no answers. You have all the facts in the world, but you have no answers. One of the things that worries me is first of all, the Russians are not going to let Assad fall easily. They're going to fight to the death on him because they need him. Because behind them, who's in line? The Iranians. And the Iranians moving into Damascus would not surprise me at all. And you talk about a threat to the world. That is a threat to the world.
Well, and Russia doesn't want to lose its
access there. The Democrats just made a great deal with the Iranians. Right?
Yeah. Oh, a great deal. And there's also no chemical weapons in Syria.
You don't see any launches of nuclear weapons there, do you?
Yeah.
All right.